All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Motivation Story. This is episode number 9. And, this whole thing started as just a project. One day I was sitting around and I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And what else could I do to give back? I have a pretty crazy, hectic story growing up, as we all do. And, there's a part of me that wants to do a little motivational speaking, potentially motivate others to live better lives. And although I'm not I'm not a motivational speaker, and God, I'm terrified speaking in front of people. So I don't know how that's going to work out. But the next best thing was starting a podcast. So the motivation story was born out of a want to try and help people, go out and find the coolest people I could find that have had some really, really amazing stories, and give them that chance to share their story with the world. So today I got a fire guest here. His name is Jonathan Sherwood. We met recently at a few roofing events. I got to know him a little bit. He's built himself quite a following on social media, and in the roofing industry. He's worked with the largest roofing companies in the country. He travels all over, state to state. You're involved in roofers helping roofers. You have your own company. You have the Roofers in Recovery. Welcome, Jonathan. Glad to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it. Thank you for thinking of me for your motivational podcast. I appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to pull away from the monetary compensation of roofing and trying to do something to give back to the community and the listeners, and really having a heart and a passion for the roofing industry, because I can really relate to that.
Yeah, no problem, man. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Every time I see you, you're just in DC, or you were just saying you're got projects in Louisiana and Colorado and Texas, and so we're really fortunate and thankful to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just jump right in, man. We have about an hour scheduled. If you go over, if we go under, that's not a big deal. Kind of up to you and how the thing flows, but yeah. So tell us, man. Like, we see you nationwide. We see you doing work everywhere. But it took a grind to get there, didn't it? Well, I think we lost you. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Oh, he's back. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
There you are. You're back.
Yeah. A call came in and kicked us off the podcast. I'm so sorry about that.
It's all good.
So I didn't catch the last of what you're saying. Can you reiterate that for me?
Yeah. So basically it's you're doing a lot of really cool stuff right now, right? You're involved in all sorts of things. Your business, your professional side has seemed to really kind of grow and expand. Professionally or personally, you're doing cool things with Roofers in Recovery. And there's a reason why you're a part of that. So I just, from the outside looking in, it always looks great. Right. But one of the cool things and things that I love to talk about is the other side, right? And the struggles and the grinds that got us to this point. So yeah, I ask, I guess it hasn't always been this easy, has it?
What's that?
It hasn't always been easy, has it?
Oh, no, absolutely not. It definitely hasn't been an easy road. It's been a long road. And, it's really the miraculous intervention of God that I'm even sitting here today and sober today. And what's so ironic is we have this motivational, inspirational podcast. And today is my 1 year from alcoholism.
Wow.
So I was, got up this morning and
That's
I'm
awesome.
Looking at the day, and I knew we had this coming, and I'm like, wow, that's just God works in mysterious ways, to have your 1 year and then have a motivational podcast that same day. So, today's a great day, and it's a good day to be sober. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't make some huge changes in my life. And, you know, we see people that are successful or we feel like are doing big things. And I'm not saying that's me, but we see people and you hit the nail on the head when we don't really see what it took for them to get there. And, you know, something that I always talk about is you see a man who, by the grace of God, has accomplished some things in his life, whether it be with his family, his business, his community, the world, you know, whatever level it may be on. And you don't know what it took that individual. So, you know, everybody's always waiting for some knight in shining armor to come relieve us from something or save us from something. But the great thing is God uses individuals like myself that were bound, abusive, addicted, violent, to glorify him and to make changes in the lives of others. Because if you could see me in the spiritual realm and see all the bandages and casts and band-aids and stitches and everything that I had been through, I wouldn't look how I look today. But, you know, after being refined by God and coming out, this is, you know, a product that's being perfected, and not perfected to say like I'm perfect, perfected to mean to being equipped. So yeah, it's been a wild road, man. You know, I lived a life of crime for a long time, and I took it to some really wild levels. It became RICO Act and organized type crime.
Wow.
And I was very violent and abusive. And on top of that, I was bound by alcoholism, drugs, sex, pornography. I wasn't a father to my daughter at all. You know, now I have a 21-year-old daughter and I have a 2-year-old son. And, you know, I didn't even engage in my daughter's life or wasn't even around until she was 5. And even after that, you know, I wouldn't even say that I was anything of what I would consider a good father until, you know, her latter years of a late teenager. I was still pretty rough. You know, I ruined a lot of things that God was trying to do in my life because I couldn't get completely submitted. I wanted to become a better man, and I walked away from some things. You know, I stopped dealing drugs and stuff when I had a RICO Act hanging over my head.
What's a RICO Act?
So a RICO Act is organized crime charges. Ours was for obtaining drugs from a Mexican connection, and then we would break down all the drugs by pounds, and then we would give all of the drugs to our runners. They would go sell the drugs throughout the city and stuff, and then bring us back the money. So since we were delegating it and we were moving it, you know, we were having cocaine weighed in kilos, and we were having marijuana weighed by the ton. So we were moving a lot of dope, amongst, you know, guns and everything else that we could get our hands on.
That's some heavy shit, man.
Yeah, guns, women, all that other stuff. But I was always kind of vacillating for a very long time between cleaning up my life completely and still wanting to hold on some things. You know, I got out of selling drugs by the grace of God, but then I still wanted to party. You know, I stopped doing narcotics, but then I still drank all the time. I bounced around from woman to woman and used sex as a drug for years and years and years of my life. And it was always about me. And I hate to say it like this, but, you know, my motto was, hooray for me, fuck you. You know, it was whatever I could do for me. I was a very selfish individual. And I shouldn't have got to where I was at now because I never really went all in. It's always had to attach to something. And it wasn't until this latter part of my life thus far that I really got set free from all that, because I finally just gave in. And I was tired of having my ass whooped by the bottle. I was tired of bouncing around from woman to woman. I was tired of not having the relationship that I wanted with my kids. And I was tired of being looked at like, hey, here's this sales machine, this successful guy, but I just was a real piece of shit outside of work. And my heart began to change, and I began to put stuff down, and I began to mature as a man. And it took me in my 30s to learn how to mature as a man, which is pretty sad. But the great thing is, it's not over till it's over. And I say this all the time. Nobody reads books about people that are still alive. They read books about people that are dead. because it's all about how you finish. So that's just kind of how I've been living my life.
Whoa, that's man. First of all, I gotta really appreciate and applaud you, man, for your vulnerability, right? And your willingness to share your story and openness. It's not an easy thing to do. We talk to a lot of people that could potentially make great guests, and a lot of people aren't willing to share and open up that sort of previous lifestyle that they may have had. But to your point, it isn't over, right? And the fact of the matter is the past is the past, and nobody really cares about what happened. They only really care about what you're doing and what you're going to do, right? And actions speak a lot louder than a history does, because we can always be different and change and live better lives. A couple of the things I'm curious about is, I guess, what do you think led you into that sort of lifestyle? One, um, shit, I forgot the other question. So we'll start with that one.
Well, that's a good question. What kind of led me into the life of crime? So, this is my opinion on it, and not even necessarily my opinion, but another way to say is this is my experience. So I'll share my experience, hope, and strength with you on this. So, and my opinion on it. I believe that when I was a young man or even a teen, and still to this day, that we're in a fatherless generation. When you take a man and you don't give him a role model to live by and raise him right, then that man is going to look for a spirit of influence. He is going to look somewhere for somebody to influence him. And if he doesn't have a leader of what is right and not a follower of what is wrong to influence his life, you're going to find that man committing crimes. He may be involved in gang activity and gang violence. You're going to find him sleeping around. You're going to find him looking for that so bad. And in my opinion, the enemy is going to come in like a thief in the night. And the Bible talks about that the enemy is like a lion prowling around looking for whom he devour. And that's how you get individuals to get in it quite like I was in it. It always starts, in my opinion, in the street. Then it kind of leads to gang activity. It can go to murder from there. It can go to organized crime. It can go to sex trafficking. It can go a lot of different ways. But it's from not having spiritual leaders or fathers in these individuals' lives. And in my opinion, the only way that you can defeat that is the power and presence of God. And if there is not a father in that young man's life, then he learns that the Lord becomes Abba Father, and he becomes his God. And Romans talks about, not to be a fruit nut or flake, I'm just a believer, a Christian, and that's just the way that I believe. But it says, as many led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. I believe that's Romans 8:14. So it took me learning that, like, hey, I never met my dad, but I have a dad now. I have an Abba Father, and really getting people in my life that were influencers. I had another influencer in my life that was Paul Reed. And he influenced me a lot because I saw a man who had, 13, 14 years sober. And I was always trying to be perfect. It's like, oh man, I'm like, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that anymore. And if I did it, then I gave up on everything. It's like, oh, I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to look at porn. So what would happen? I'd look at porn, where that leads to, and then I'd beat myself up, and then I'd have a drink. And then it would just be this downhill recidivism cycle that I was in for like my entire life. And then when I saw Paul, I said, man, here's a guy that's a little rough around the edges, loves God, loves his wife, he's sober, and he's by all means not striving to be perfect. He's just striving to be a genuine good man. And that kind of shifted my thinking a lot. And I think that was one of the pivotal or landmark moments in my life where God really helped me to understand that it was by the grace of God, and that the gifts of God were without repentance, and that favor wasn't fair, and that he had a plan for my life, and that I'm not going to be perfect, but just to, like, they say in recovery AA, we strive for spiritual progression, not spiritual perfection. And that's when things really kind of changed for me. But to go back and not to beat a dead horse, it's just the fatherless generation and these young men not having proper influence in their life.
So I guess, how can we, if there's somebody listening to this that maybe not going through the exact same sort of experience that you've had, but maybe, knows that they're potentially leading down a rough road, right? And don't have a dad or don't have family or have somehow gotten themselves into that situation. what do you sit down and tell them to say, look, man, like you're going to get through this, but you gotta act differently, or you gotta be, hang around different people, or what's that advice look like?
So, there is help out there. And so we'll cover a few of those things. The first thing is, obviously I'm on the board for Roofers in Recovery. And, I just want to clarify that we're a recovery group for the roofing industry and anybody that's in the roofing industry, not just necessarily roofing contractors, but we also just have a heart and a passion in general. For me, I have a real heart and passion for inner city and inner city youth. So I'm always willing to work with those guys as well. But we are not an organized AA meeting. We're a recovery group, and we meet on Zoom every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central for 1 hour. And that is a great place to go to hear experience, hope, and strength, and connect with men that care and kind of get things moving for you. Now, if we're talking about individuals that are really strung out, really bound, life or death scenario, and they don't have the resources, the other thing that we do is we will vet individuals in the industry. And if they don't have the monies to send themselves to rehab, and we think they're serious, we'll pay to send them to rehab for 30 days and then work with them after that. So we have that program. The other thing is you can find local NA, SA, AA groups that can be looked up where you can go in and get some relief. And here's the thing, nobody wants to talk. You said it earlier, nobody likes to get into the details of it. But the reality of it is you're never going to find relief until you open your mouth. It doesn't matter what your belief system is. Until you open your mouth and talk about some of the things that you are bound and struggling with another individual. And in my opinion, if it's a man, he needs to be talking to a man. If it's a woman, he needs to be talking to a woman. That way you don't get the confliction or convoluted of any type of attraction or sex, which will come in and ruin what you're trying to do, and get some of that relief. Then it's just going to hurt. But the other thing is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So if somebody's truly not ready, which means, just to be blatantly honest, they haven't had their ass whooped enough by life, drinking, sex, drugs, abuse, whatever it may be, gangbanging, you're not going to change them, because they have to come to the point where they say, I have absolutely had enough, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to change a life. Once an individual, man or woman, gets there, then you have something that you can work with. The other thing for me, and I can only talk about me and my beliefs, is obviously I'm a believer, is church. So for being a Christian, then I would recommend getting plugged into a church, and not any church. You might need to go to a few of them, in my opinion, where you feel the power and the presence of the Spirit of God and you feel led there. Or there's other belief systems that have other organizations or organized religions that you can get involved in as well. So it's whatever works for that individual. So those are some things they can do to really help.
Wow. Okay. That's really helpful. Where can, I'll get that link from y'all for the Zoom, or a way to connect to you guys. I'll put it in the description of the podcast.
Okay.
But if they can't find it there, is there a place, something they can search to find that?
Yeah. So depending on what it is they're struggling with, but are you talking about for the Roofers in Recovery?
For like the Roofers in Recovery, the Zoom.
Okay. So Roofers in Recovery, we have a Facebook page. You go on Facebook, type in Roofers in Recovery. There's 3 of us that are admin, 4 of us that are admin. I think Kim and Paul Reed, Eric Obrant, and myself. And the only thing that I want to say is, you must answer the questions to enter the group. It doesn't matter what the answers are. Are you sober? Yes or no. Pretty simple. Most people aren't, to be honest, that are getting there. That's why they're in there, to get relief. Are you sober? Are you in the roofing industry? And you don't have to be in the roofing industry. If you answer the questions, we'll still accept you. So they need to make sure they answer the questions, but you can Google it, pull it up. Also, roofersinrecovery.com. You can find us online. We're at almost every roofing event that there are. And even if you pop me up or Google me, you'll see me attached to everything on it as well. So pretty easy to find. We're really proud of it. Like tonight's a meeting. We never miss a Tuesday, and I'm super excited for tonight.
So where can people find you, Jonathan? How can they find you on Instagram or?
Yeah, so Instagram, I'm at Jonathan B. Sherwood, all one word. You can find me on Facebook, Jonathan Sherwood. You can find my private Facebook group, Roofers Helping Roofers. You can find my public business page, Roofers Helping Roofers. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube under my name. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Medium. You can find me on SoundCloud. So, I'm pretty easy to find. You pop my name in the internet and I pop up, and it should be able to direct you to me. And then, I'm always open for any type of direct message and help people out. I have a true heart and passion for this industry. I care more about roofers in recovery and people getting free from bondage than I do anything else. It's not about the money to me. There's been times where it's been all about the money. And those were the times where I wasn't living the way I was supposed to be and I was miserable. But I look at it like this, a man is not measured in his paycheck. That's not success. Success is measured in who the man is as a husband, a father, as a community, as his leader. And I want to be a successful man and build a legacy. And I'm always here to help.
That's amazing. Yeah. So for those that do decide to Google Jonathan, you'll find an endless rabbit hole of material where he's always, what he said, talking about roofers helping roofers, right? If we'll get into that here in a second. Commercial Roofing Academy, Roofers in Recovery. He's just always out in the limelight. Did you? I guess you sort of just stumbled into this, right? Or was it one day did you make a decision like that you're going to be all over social media, all in the public eye? Was that the plan, or did it just kind of happen?
No, so that wasn't the plan, and the whole roofers helping roofers organically grew. It was never planned. I never knew I was going to have a trademark business with roofers helping roofers that would help with project and contract procurement and fulfillment and consulting and keynote speaking or any of that, to be honest with you. I just had a real heart and passion for the industry. Always have. Been in roofing now for, 13, 14 years. And I didn't have any social media because I went through a really bad divorce because I mistreated my ex-wife and she had to leave me, which I'm proud of her for doing because I had no business having a wife at that point in my life. So I shut down all my social media. Fast forward, years go by, still no social media. And I went to an event and Gary Vee was speaking. And he said, one or two of you, 10 of you is going to hear what I'm saying today and you're actually going to do it. And he talked about documenting what you're doing and giving value away for free, which in turn will generate business. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a try. So I hired a videographer. I made a commitment. I put my head down. I started grinding out and posting graphics and posting videos and just trying to duplicate myself to the audience and capture the audience and just give away. You'll notice all my stuff online is free. Go to my YouTube channel, go to any of my stuff. I don't charge for any of that stuff. I put out videos every single day of the week, 5 days a week, sometimes 6, trying to help the industry. And in that, I started getting a ton of calls. And the calls at the beginning weren't anything to do with making any resources. It might be somebody FaceTime me on a roof. How do I do this curb? Do you have an HVAC contractor? What do you think about this? How would you build this proposal? And then at about 8-9 months into it, which is exhausting a lot of resources, doing all the videography, the marketing, the social media, being everywhere, we ended up getting our 7-figure job. And then it just kind of took off from there. And that's been like over 3 years now. And it just organically has been driving in about 3 to 5 opportunities a week that, wow, you dial in and vet. And, out of those, it may become a couple real good opportunities, but it's consistent organic marketing. And the Roofers Helping Roofers just went from helping people to continuing to help people to putting on their shirts, helping them sell, and then turnkeying the job, to large companies tracking me down and saying, hey, we want you to come do this job. We want your aggressive price point. We don't want to learn about any of that. Here you go. And it just developed into it. And I never had anything strategically planned for it. Then it took me, I just got my trademark like 3 or 4 months ago. That was 2 years of attorneys and fees. And it just developed into what you see now as a consulting platform, a sales, procurement and fulfillment platform, the keynote speaking engagements that you see. And that was just really something that just kind of happened. And that's how I know that one was definitely God's plan and not mine, because I've had a lot of plans and most of the time they don't work out. I'm like every other entrepreneur, I've failed my way to success. And that one just came in and just was like so easy. It just kept happening and happening and happening.
Shout out to Roofers Helping Roofers. I've bugged Jonathan numerous times with pictures and text and calls, and he's always willing to get back to you and help you out. He's helped me out on numerous proposals and bids, and I guess that's a great segue into Commercial Roofing Academy. I want to shout them out. Where Jonathan amongst some of the other people, Paul Reed, Kim Reed, who am I missing? There's lots of people involved in running that, right? Tony, and but essentially it's a place for residential roofing contractors or even commercial roofers that are just trying to gain more knowledge in the industry. Where you guys go, and it's a year-long course, and you just teach, right? And you're the, I think, known as the coatings guy, foam and coatings guy in the industry. And we'll have to watch ourselves because the rest of the podcast will be about foam and coatings, right? But Jonathan's your guy for foam and coatings. So if anybody out there is listening to this, that's a roofing contractor, reach out to Jonathan. But how'd you get involved with the Commercial Roofing Academy?
That was another one of those things that just kind of happened. I was doing the roofers helping roofers, and it's no secret. I'm good friends and very close with the Reeds, and this was Paul and Steve Patrick were talking about this. I had nothing to do with this, and they were talking about it, and they were looking at making the academy. And then he came to me one time and they said, "Hey, we really want you to be involved in this academy." And I know I had worked with Paul a lot, so he knew the capacity of what I could do. And I hadn't done too much work with Steve Patrick. And then once they worked with me, they were like, absolutely, we want you on here as one of the coaches. We want you on here as one of the partners and the faces of it. And they brought me in as an actual partnership. So that was another one that it just happened. I never knew the Commercial Roofing Academy was coming down the road. I didn't have any type of plans for it. I was knocking out roofers helping roofers. I thought I was originally just going to be kind of like a trial where they were like, well, let's let him teach on foam and coatings. And then after that, they're like all in, want him as a part of this, want him as a coach, want him as a partner. And now it's just become one of the platforms and part of my life. I love it. When you eat, sleep, and live roofing, then you enjoy being in it. So I love, every couple months going and teaching and hanging out with the people and meeting the people. And like you said, I start talking about foam and coatings, we can go down a long hole, or we can burn up a lot of time. And you've already been down that path for me, so I won't go down there. But I truly love talking about it and teaching on it. So I know I'm in the right place at the right time, because when you love what you do, it shows. And I know people can tell that I really do care about the coatings and the foam and the commercial roofing. So it's just fun for me. I don't even really see it as work. It's great to get paid to when you love what you do. But I love when I get the reports back and we've had guys sign their first 7-figure deal, or somebody calls and said they did this big coating and they don't have to even do it with me, or somebody's using tropical and I hear these reports back. That's what I love, because I love to celebrate other people's wins. And that's why I love being part of Roofers Helping Roofers, because it wasn't just some scheme to draw on roofers and come up with a niche to be able to do work with other roofing contractors. It was generally helping people. And because I help people with no money is changing hands, it built itself. And I love the success stories of people that I talked to them. That I had, this is my favorite story too. I was at a conference and it was a couple years ago, and I was waiting at the baggage claim for my suitcase. And I'm waiting there and I'm standing there, and this guy runs up to me. I'd never seen him in my life. And he said, "Are you Jonathan Sherwood?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, I watch all your videos. I've been a residential roofer my entire career." He goes, "I watched 2 to 3 of your videos on TPO." He goes, "And I just sold my first TPO job and put it on based off of all your videos. Thank you so much." Gave me a huge hug and ran off. And I was up for roofing industry's most influential in 2020. And that's when it was. And they were interviewing me about the award. And they were like, obviously the roofing industry loves drama. They're trying to stir it up between me and Pate and the other guy and Autumn and all that. And are you going to win and all this? And I said, you know what? I've already won my award when this happened. When I landed from that plane and this happened, I won that award. So whatever happens tonight is great. So for me, it was great to win the award, but I had already got what I wanted to get. That guy was so happy. He paid nothing for those videos. I poured my heart into it. He duplicated me. He sold the job. I had nothing to do with it. Never met him. I didn't make money off it. Nothing. Put the job on, had his pictures, showing me everything. And now he's in commercial. Doesn't get any better than that.
What a cool feeling,
Yeah.
To know that you've impacted somebody's life in that way. I think that's, from a lot of my mentors and people that I look up to, that's what real happiness and success is in life, right? Is how many lives have you changed and how have you impacted them in what way? So that's awesome, man. And you know, while we're on the coatings topic, and we won't talk too much about it, but you know, me being in the industry, coatings could have a bad rep on occasion. Foam can definitely have a bad rep. And this is something that you said at the Commercial Roofing Academy I attended a few months ago. But you talked about the person on the wand needs, what is it, the magic wand, or you said something about magic, you know, the magician behind the wand or something like that. And talk, you know, a second or two about just how important knowing what you're doing is on coatings, and why it may have that bad rep because of it.
Yeah, and then you bring up a great point, because one of the things that you hear me talk about all the time on social media or even events is knowing your craft. You know, that people ask me all the time. I was doing a class yesterday, and the guy said, okay, I've heard about you. I don't know you. I know you sell commercial roofs. Supposedly you're supposed to be good at it. What makes you different from any other contractor? What can you give to me that I can go tell my clients is going to make me different? And I told him, I know my craft. I'm not just a pencil whipper, but I'm actually somebody who understands fluid applied restoration and foam. And so when I sell it, I'm educating the customer. And I tell them that's what separates you from a lot of roofing contractors, because there are so many roofing contractors that are phenomenal salesmen. They can be the best salesman in shoe leather, tons of them. I know them, but they don't understand systems, and they don't understand spec, and they don't understand application. And if you understand those things, then it's going to carry off. So if I understand all of that, then I better have somebody behind the gun that knows how to put it down, or I'm just casting it out on deaf ears and I'm just full of shit and there's no reason anybody should listen to me. So it's very, very important when you're in fluid applied restoration that whoever's behind that gun, I like to call them magicians. They understand weather. They understand humidity. They understand if it's foam, the A and the B side, and turning things up and turning things down and can hear it. They know how to maintenance and mechanic things if something breaks down. And if they're doing silicone or urethane or acrylic, they understand the differences between those coatings and when to use them and when not to use them, and how to applicate, how to check mills thicknesses, you know, how to do slit samples, all those things. So I'm a huge, huge, huge believer that if you're going to get into fluid applied restoration, you need to have somebody competent in the application process. And if you don't, then you need to link with somebody that you can trust in the industry to get you competent applicators. And then, you know, when you're doing good business and you're a good businessman, everybody just dances with who brought them and it all works out. And then you'll build your own, duplicate, steal shamelessly, and boom, take off with it. That's the other thing that I love to see in the industry is I have had companies that started off all residential, 1 or 2 jobs commercial, 2-3 years ago when I started this, and now they have 4 or 5 offices, an entire commercial division, and their own foam rigs, all from closing big deals with me turnkey them saving the money, placing it correctly, and learning from me.
But it, you know, I also remember at CRA, you had a story, you know, and a lot of the trials and tribulations that you've gone through, right, to be this expert. Let's talk about that. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you can remember, and maybe shit that's gone wrong? And, you know, we talked about lost money at one point, you know, or mistakes.
I'm going to give you a good one that's pretty embarrassing, but I think it'll be encouraging to a listener. And, you know, it took me a long time before I was willing to talk about this story. But years ago, when I wanted to get into foam, I knew about coatings. I understood coatings and silicone. I didn't know anything about foam. I was like every other contractor. Foam sucks. It's blisters everywhere. Don't buy it. Let's do TPO. And why do we do that? Because we don't understand the product. That's really why guys do that. Now, I was that same guy. I got offered, I'm not going to say where it was, in the United States, in a big city in downtown. And it was a 10 or 15 story building. I think it was both. I think there was one roof on the 10th story and one roof on the 15th story, right in the heart of downtown in the big city. And it was foam roofs, and it was a hotel that everybody knows. And it was a high-end hotel. And I ended up getting the job. I beat out the local contractors that have been doing foam forever. So I'm scrambling, looking for a foam guy. Well, I went, you know, and I'm being very careful with names of manufacturers. I went to an old manufacturer rep that was a great rep that had now was an applicator. And I didn't know a lot about applicators. So I hire him, and it ends up becoming a shit show. And we're tearing off this foam roof 10 stories up, buildings all around, everybody can see. And he ends up quitting on me while the roof is open. and we're removing and replacing fluted metal deck, and we got a little bit of foam down, and there's no rain in the forecast. And out of nowhere, a huge pop-up storm comes and floods every single floor all the way down. Wow. The workout room, all the pre-core machines and treadmills destroyed, all the offices for the management there, the atrium and the cafeteria. And to top it all off, on top of that, there was a wedding the next evening. So I'm scrambling to get a restoration company there just to bring one floor back to life to have the wedding while these people are threatening to sue me and all these things. Long story short, my first foam job cost me $250,000 in the hole. I didn't get paid back from insurance till almost 2 years later.
Wow.
It was a complete nightmare. And that's when I met a guy that knowed foam that's a mentor to me still this day. And he said, "You're a great salesman and you understand a lot about specific things, but you don't know shit about foam. But I'm going to tell you this. Most people would run away from this and never touch it again." He goes, "You're a little different." He goes, "You're either going to run away from this. You'll make it right with the customer because of who you are, or you're going to learn from this and foam is going to make you a lot of money." Obviously, we know what route that I chose, but that was my first experience with foam.
Jesus.
It really sucked, man.
That I say this all the time. It's not when something's going to go wrong or if something's going to go wrong, it's when, right? And then how it gets handled. I don't know. Can you even call yourself a roofer if you've never had like water penetrate, or you know what I mean?
If you've never tasted liability, then I have to ask one, how many roofs have you done? How long have you been roofing? Those kind of questions, because a true roofing contractor that does a lot of work is tasted liability at some sort. And usually if they respond that they haven't, it means that they haven't been in business that long. Because if you've ran a sustainable business, I don't care how good you are. It's
going to happen.
Stuff happens. So that's what I always ask. My whole thing is, well, how long have you been in business? Usually if they say no, it's somewhere between 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be, piss on your fire, but it's coming.
It's like those that ride bikes. I used to be a rider, and it's those that have gone down and those that are going down, right?
Yeah.
Similar analogy. Well, cool, man. Yeah, this has been good. What else you want to talk about? You got anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's been good, man. I hope that it's encouraging to those that are listening. I hope that it was the type of story that you're kind of looking for. What we'd like to do is, we're all about cultivating relationships. You and I have a relationship. We'll also put this out on our YouTube as well. And I know we talk quite often, so I'd like to get something rolling with you. And anytime you need anything from me, especially for stuff like this, you can always count on me.
Yeah, no, Jonathan's my go-to guy for coatings. Anytime that my company might need something, I have an idea on coatings. I've actually done some coatings. I've hand rolled in the middle of a Houston summer 2 years ago, 250 squares worth of silicone with me and a bunch of college students. So it was a grind. Trust me.
Oh yeah.
It was a grind.
Back rolling 25,000 square feet in the summer of Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took us like a month.
Said, I learned a lot, but this is the last time I'm doing this myself.
Yeah. Never again. Never again. But actually, before we wrap this up, I just want to bring up one more thing. So, you talked about religion. You talked about having a mentor like Paul Reed, right? And for those that don't know, Paul Reed has a really, really large roofing company, successful business person who's also in Roofers in Recovery. Really nice guy. He's also a coach there, and he's answered many texts and phone calls with me recently on stuff. So shout out to Paul and the Reeds. But what I don't know, stuff will continue to go wrong, right? In your life, like in the future. We may slip up one day. I don't know. You said you've been sober a year now, which is congratulations. That's awesome to be a part of this. Did you try to be sober before that? And for how long? And what happens when you slip up? Because I've never really gone through that process.
Yeah. So I tried a lot of times to get sober, and I had 8 months. I would get time, but the reality was I was just a dry drunk because I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't working the program, and I wasn't dealing with the real problem. The alcohol is not the problem. It's the character defects And the reasons why I was drinking that needed to be dealt with was the problem. And still I tried until I started dealing with that. I never got the freedom from the alcoholism. I could go 6 months, I could go 2 weeks, I could go one day, and then I'd take a drink and be on a spree. I start drinking for days and doing cocaine and having sex with women and just acting a fool. So it wasn't until I dealt with the character defects and dialed into the problem that I actually began to get what I would call sobriety. The rest of it was I just wasn't drinking, but I was still angry. I was walking around miserable, irritable, restless, and discontent. I was just using sex instead of drinking. I just was using weed instead of drinking. It was like I was just replacing the addiction with some other type of addiction. And I was just angry all the time. It wasn't until I started hearing others experience hope and strength and then getting a sponsor and working the steps that I found the freedom. And, obviously, like I was saying earlier, I'm a believer. I tried church to get me sober forever. I tried using the call of God on my life to get me sober forever. It didn't work. And I loved God. And here I was just a drunk in the pew that wanted to do great things for God, but couldn't because I was still hung up on alcoholism. So for me, it was really dealing with the character defects and the alcoholism and getting true sobriety as opposed to just trying to walk away from it. And I used to get just discouraged because I would meet people who became a Christian and then never drank again. And I'm like, I love God. How come this didn't happen for me? How come this isn't working for me? Why am I so hung up on it? Well, I just learned the hard way and needed a little extra help, and I had to really dial in on the recovery. But yes, some people radically stop and never pick it up again. That's not the case for me. I was truly bound by addiction, and I needed to really dial in and check my temperature and get things taken care of.
At what point did you realize that you were going to actually try to stop drinking? Like, was it a specific time, or was it a moment?
So I tried to stop drinking most of my life. When did I make the decision to get into recovery and really take it serious? I was connected with Roofers in Recovery. I had a few months sober, and I took off to Mexico and lost my sobriety, but I wasn't working the program yet. I came back home, and I'll never forget, I was going to get a breakfast burrito at this little local strip mall by my house. And this is kind of a terrible story, but true, and a little funny. And next door to the burrito place, I had never noticed it. There was this place with blacked out windows and no sign above it. I'm like, oh my goodness, they got a rub and tug next to the burrito place. I was like, that's freaking crazy. So here I am holding my son, that's like a year old, going to get a breakfast burrito. And what do? I'm like, I got to see if this is really a rub and tug. And I freaking throw the door open.
You got to know.
This baby, and they're in the middle of an AA meeting. And I'm like, oh shit. And I close the door. And for some reason, I was like, I took a picture of the times that was just on a piece of, I remember like yesterday, it was like a lime green piece of computer paper just taped on the door. And I took a picture of the times. And on June 8th last year, I was like, I'm going to go in there. And I walked in there, and I'll never forget. And I was sitting there, and they looked at me and they said, why are you here? And it came out of my mouth like before I could even think about it. I said, because I want to be a better man. And I never left. And I started working the program. That's how it happened.
Shout out to Jonathan and everybody else who's listening in that is going through something similar or their own sort of challenges and whatever that may be. It's hard to talk about. It's you got to look at yourself in the mirror every day, right? And am I doing my best to be a better person? Our past is our past, and it's a part of who we are, but it's not who we'll be going forward. And you got to put in the work. You got to want it, right? And the other thing about this too, right? It's easy to slip up, and that's okay. Like, that's all right. Just get back on the saddle, right? Do it again. Yep. Like 75 hard. I've tried it 3 times.
Yep. I'm in it right now, and it's freaking hard.
Yeah. I got to day 65 on my 3rd try.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's encouraging for me. I'm on day 38, 37 or 38.
Dude, this was a shout out to Andy Frisilla, but yeah, this was it was through Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. Christmas dinner, I was out walking at like 11:30 p.m. like, cause I had to get my second workout. Like, I sacrificed so much, and I failed it on day 65 because I forgot to read my book. I fell asleep early.
Yeah.
And then next morning I was like, look, I could lie. Nobody would know. I could just keep it going. but it was like accountability, right? Like own your shit. I failed it, you know, and I will do it again when I'm ready to make that commitment. So, but it's about the decision with anything, right?
Yeah. You know what I tell people all the time too, it's not always about going forward. It's about not going backwards. So sometimes when all you can do is stand. You don't always have to be excelling in life, becoming this great person and stuff. But what we don't want to do, and what I did for years, so I speak from experience, is backpedal. That's where I messed up a lot.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, hopefully this was helpful. Jonathan, thanks for your time, man. It's been a pleasure. I'll put all the links so you could find Jonathan. I'll put all the links to the groups he's involved in. They'll all be in the description of the podcast. And that's it for today. We'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it, man.